Assalamualaikum. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mr. Ali. Thank you for tuning in to the real story today, which is the Thursday, the 18th of March 2021. We are almost coming up to the first anniversary of the lockdown as well. So, what a year it has been and where has it gone? So, as always, I'd like to start off my show by sharing the latest dashboard that we have for COVID and what that means for us in our respective areas. So in terms of the positive cases, that continues to decline for a fourth week running. So in terms of new positive cases across Birmingham, it is 864 compared to 1,011 the week previous. What does that mean per 100,000 population? It is 88 positive cases per 100,000 population compared to the previous week of 92. In terms of those areas which have the highest number of positive cases are thus Shardend with 211, followed by Edgbaston, which is 154. After that, Ward End, which has 132. After that, we have King standing. So if you have a business, if you reside there, or if you're dropping your children off to school, then please continue to social distance, continue to wear a mask and sanitize your hands as much as possible. In terms of vaccinations now, you'll be glad to know we are hitting the 26 million figure now across the nation. And that's a huge testament to the fantastic NHS up and down this fantastic country of ours. Also from tomorrow morning onwards, the following 4 countries, Qatar, Oman, Ethiopia and Somalia are now going to be in the red list countries, which means that anyone that is returning back to the UK, i.e. a British citizen returning back, or is using those countries as a transit to enter back into the UK mainland, then you are having to quarantine for 10 days at a cost of £1,750 per person, which is going to be incurred by yourself. So today we are going to be talking about the safety of women after the horrific, the scandalous murder of Sarah Everard, which took place on the 3rd of March of 2021 this year. She was only 33 years old, a marketing executive in London, just going back home, walking home after visiting a friend, and she was brutally murdered as a result from the suspect in charge. And because it is it is an active case, I'm not going to talk anymore. But one thing that he has really stirred up is emotion about how fearful women fear when they are in a public domain, whether they are on public transport, whether they are walking on high streets or any kind of public facility. Really, women complain that they are being harassed, they feel vulnerable, and what can be done in order to make sure they feel secured, and what can we do as men in order to change our behavior and our actions as well. To help me navigate this particular show, I have none other than, I don't think anyone that I can get better than Sahdaish Pall, who has a real track record of women being a women champion and really highlighting this issue. Sahdaish, thank you for coming on the real story on ZMC Network. It's sad that we're not meeting virtually under better circumstances. But when you heard about the horrific story of Sarah, what went through your body?
Thanks for inviting me on the show, Mr. Ali. With regards to Sarah, I mean, I've been working in this field now for over 25 years. So, to be honest, it's not something that's really shocking to me. I hear stories about women being harassed, being sexually propositioned on a daily basis. It's not anything new. When you're a woman, you know what it's like. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter like where you live. Women in communities where there are villages that are meant to, you know, nice areas, or whether you're living in an area that's deprived, all women fear walking on the streets late at night. walking, going, even during lockdown. I know there was an increase of women reporting issues around when they're going jogging, for example. There's less people around. When you're going for a jog, they feel uncomfortable with, other people following them, men following them, making comments and things like that. So it's not surprising. It's very sad that it's taken for somebody like this to die, for it to become such a big issue. Um, but these things are happening on a daily basis, and people have been quiet about it. So unfortunately, Sarah's death will leave a legacy, which is not great for her, but maybe it will help the government, the police sit up and think about what is it that they need to do more of to help protect women.
No, definitely, Sahdaish. And I think this has really caught the nation's mood. A lot of politicians, a lot of people in authority or influential powers like yourself have really put this on the map now. And as a result, Priti Patel has said that she is considering new laws, certainly around crime, sexual crime that's taking place on a public in a public environment, whether it's harassment or any kind of incitement as well. And that's glad to see. And if that is what it took, then at least there is a lasting legacy after the horrific murder of Sarah Everard. And I know before we actually go into the real meat of topic, you mentioned that you've got 25 years of work and experience around this field. And I think maybe we're just putting it into context. I know you've got a couple of positions now, and you just also completed another qualification a couple of weeks ago. But
Yeah.
I know you've got a domestic violence manager at Ashram Housing, and there's one or two others that it may be worth just sharing that with the audience.
Yeah, so I do work for a housing association in the Midlands. I'm a domestic violence service manager. I'm also a director at a community interest company called the Sikh Women's Action Network. And then the last part of the work, my role or my hat is I run a very small company which is about educating children and young people about domestic abuse and healthy relationships, because I truly believe that can try and teach children at a very young age about these issues, then maybe later on 10, 15 years from today, they won't be behaving in a way where they become victims or perpetrators. So those are sort of my three key hats that I wear, but all of it relates to violence against women and girls in the most part. We still support men in my CIC. We support victims from all different communities. So although we're the Sikh Women's Action Network, we don't discriminate, and we don't we're not exclusive to the Sikh community only, and therefore we do get a lot of referrals from other communities as well. But you know it's really important work. I have dedicated my life to it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I understand if you don't want to go too deep into it. I know there's a group called Reclaim These Streets, which wanted to hold a vigil last week. And as you know, no demonstrations are allowed under these COVID restrictions. And after having a negotiation and a consultation with the Metropolitan Police, that particular vigil was officially called off. But nonetheless, because as I mentioned earlier, the mood of the nation has been captured, and there were impromptu hundreds and thousands of people that had gathered that wanted to commemorate and pay their respects to Sarah and to her family. And obviously, there was a resulting 4 or 5 people, or women, actually, I should say, that were arrested. So, I mean, what did you think? Did the police mishandle that, knowing the sensitivities and the emotions that were running high at that stage? Or do you understand the environment that they were operating, and no real demonstrations could be held, which put their danger and the public's danger into compromise?
Yeah. So my view is my personal view, just to put it out there. So I
Sure.
saw what I saw on TV, so I wasn't there myself. I do think that the whole event was mishandled. I think that if the police had talked to the people who wanted to hold the vigil, they could have done some sort of management around it. They could have had a strategy around how many people were allowed to enter the park, and then they could have managed that, moved people on, and then allowed more people in. So it could have been a controlled vigil. And I also believe that if you look at the images, nobody was making any noise. There was no chanting. It wasn't a protest. And I know some people were calling it a protest, but it wasn't. Women were wearing masks. So it was done very, very, very carefully, and people came to remember her. And obviously thinking about their own personal experiences as well. So I do think it was mishandled. I think the police used brutality, which you see on TV when protests are happening and people are smashing up windows and shop windows and things. That's the sort of aggression that you see in those situations, not this remembering somebody, a woman who has died, lost her life to a murderer. And of all things, the police know they're in a really, really difficult position because of all people. This is a police officer who's been accused of this murder. He's allegedly committed this crime. And so they didn't help the situation in that sense. They were already in a bad light in front of these women. And actually, I would say even before that, because I know working in this environment, it's sad because you go to the police to report. We encourage victims that we work with to report to the police, but we know how many victims are turned away without the right support, without the right help, without taking statements. And we have to really, really push sometimes for the police to do something. And I'm not saying it's all officers, but I do think that police officers do need more training. They need more awareness and understanding around these issues and how to handle things when people come to you and report. I honestly, having looked at it, my opinion is that it was really way over the top.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that and calling out as you saw it. Today, for those of you that have just tuned in, we are talking about the safety of women in public spaces, whether it's on the footpath or whether they're walking home from work or from a friend's house, as it was with Sarah Everard, and generally about how they are treated by men in particular, because 95% of the time it is men that are the perpetrators. And we are going to discuss, what we can do as men and what training can we do in order to make sure that we are controlled and responsible, and make sure that as a result of our actions, nothing untoward happens to 50% of the population. So just going to read through a couple of comments if I can first. So Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam. I hope all is well. Women should take up martial arts, self-defense to protect themselves. Muhtarim, I agree, but what I would say is I think the onus is more about us as men in terms of our behavior rather than anything that if women want to do that to feel protected and boost their own self-confidence and keep fit by all means, but that shouldn't be dictated because of a action of a certain minority. I hope that's quite clear. Zaid Chaudhry, hi Mr. Ali, great topic. Absolutely, I was keen to get this done. Kids need to be taught about respecting both sexes at an early age. Most of the domestic violence is seen by the children when the parents are arguing or fighting in front of them. Absolutely. We are going to go into the crux of the matter as to the why. But before we do that, Sahdaish, I know it's a bit of an impromptu show. I have got some local figures, that I've got in terms of victims of crime, and in particular, not domestic crime but women crime. Do you have any data, or would you like me to share what I have?
Absolutely, share it. I know that I was in a meeting not too long ago with the independent advisory group with the police, and some of the statistics that they were talking about, particularly around rape cases, they said that 97% of cases weren't being tried in court. Only 3% of those rape cases were being prosecuted. And for me, it's almost like saying it's the perfect crime. I mean, it's like you can 97% chance of you getting away with it. Now, I don't want to be promoting that, but actually you have to wonder what is going on here, that women who are reporting it are not being believed. And I know people will say, well, sometimes they lie. Yes, I know that. I admit, and I know women who have lied about it. But in the vast majority of cases, they are truly talking about issues and incidents that have occurred with them. and yet they're not being believed, or the follow-up is not happening with the police, or the investigations are not thorough enough. And so we know this is a massive issue, but why is it happening?
Seems to be a breakdown in the whole justice process, really, and something that needs to be reviewed. A lot more resource and I would say energy now needs to be put into it. So, in terms of the data, that what I have is this is until March of 2020, 207 women were killed in Great Britain. And most of these are in home. 70% of these are, we know, domestic cases, and 9 out of the 10 killers are men. So that just gives you an indication of the perpetrators, and we know also 50% of the female victims often know that their killer, who it is. So it's someone within their circle that has passed away. And in terms of sexual assault, this is the startling statistic, really. 3.4 million people, or women, shall I say, have been victims of sexual assault at some point in their lives. And I think I was listening to another show where they said roughly 9 out of 10 women say that they have been victims of some kind of sexual assault at some point of their lives, whether it's at school. And there's also a data whereby roughly 40% or 45% of young girls still at school complain that they are victims of some kind of sexual assault, whether that's verbal or whether that's physical. So these are really startling figures. What you just said, Sahdaish, 1 million of those women were complaining that they had been raped or had been attempted raped, and only a third actually reported to the police. So out of that million, only a third reported it. But as you said, I mean, you mentioned 3%. The data that I've got is 5% of those were actually convicted. But more worryingly, of that actually is the is the ones that aren't sold. So they're reported, but nothing happens as a result as well. So when you say only 5% convicted, 95% of those cases that do actually go to the police, they actually aren't going to the court, or there's not insufficient evidence. And that is, if you're a woman or you're a victim, that is not going to, give you any kind of confidence, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to, Mr. I read you just a quick message that we had, because I put it on Facebook, so it's open on Facebook. About we wanted to get people to talk about some of the incidents and share their stories if they were comfortable. So it looks like it's a father who's messaged, and he said, "My daughter has been touched on a bus inappropriately, and to top that, she has suffered unacceptable sexual abuse threats from male peers at school. They all thought it was funny, threatening to rape her because she had cut hair, and that made her a derogatory word. She was 13. It's not women that need to change, it's men and boys that need to be educated." So this is literally, I just, a couple of days ago, I put this up because I wanted people to share so that people can see what is happening. And this is a father who's talked about his daughter. Now, she's a 13-year-old girl in school. This is happening. Now, when we were at school, you and I, bullying was name calling, pushing and shoving, those types of things. Nobody wanted to be your friend and you got
Ethnicity,
excluded.
race, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, things like that. Yeah. Now, obviously, we're seeing so much more that it's taken a very sexual nature. Bullying is now becoming very sexualized, and that's becoming the normality. That is how young people are bullied in school. So they're dragged into toilets, forced to, do sexual acts, or they are touched, they are harassed, they are assaulted, sexually assaulted. This is happening in schools, and it's not going reported because now it's become so normalized. It's happening so much that young people see it as, this happens, you move on. It's quite frightening, to be honest.
Yeah, no, thank you. Got some more comments coming through, Sadesh. Kids need to be okay. We need to respect women. They are someone's daughter, granddaughter, mother, sister, niece, sister-in-law. Without them, we wouldn't be in this world. Absolutely. We salute Sadesh for all the work she does. We are so proud of you and salute you. Thank you so much. That is by Javed. So real good response by the people on social media as well. I want to touch on on something that you said now. That you said that it's
Hmm.
almost common now for people to think that it's their right to go and impose themselves on them. We know hand touching. We know sort of even unwelcome sort of hugs. These are sort of creepy behaviors that people think they can get away with it. When I say people, it's men. It is the
Mm.
male gender that's doing this. But I want to also go on to the other extreme as well, whereby how can we restore confidence to young women or women generally that they reclaim the streets. You can walk from your friends or your parents' house to your own, from the bus stop or from the train station to home. I mean, you being a woman, are you able to sort of maybe describe or tell us what sort of things are going through your mind? Because I was listening to another horrific story. If I was to walk from from my friends to my house, I'd just walk. But one or two people say, look, we try to anticipate the danger. Where are the black spots? Where can
Mm.
people lurking? Who if someone's walking a bit too close, I start being a bit conscious of being self-aware what may happen. We
Mm.
are much more aware of our surroundings. I don't know whether you're able to give any experience or
Yeah.
add any experience to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, I would say it's not even nighttime. I mean, I've been to a petrol pump and people have made lewd comments there, sexualized comments. I've been to a cash point and the person didn't say anything sort of sexual, but it was the way he said it, and he talked about my skirt and he was asking me where I lived and things like, this is like 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. I've popped up to the cash point. I've walked there. So things like that, just those types of things. And it's uncomfortable because you don't know what they mean by that. And it's not, it was a full length skirt. So it wasn't like people might think, oh, was she wearing something short or whatever. Um, but these are comments that are made, unwelcome comments, and make you feel very, very uncomfortable. I remember somebody try to touch me in a cinema because there weren't many people around. And I went to watch a film and I was on my own because at the time I was doing support work and I was sitting on my own in a part of the cinema, and I'd gone there because I had a late shift. So it was just one of those things. My kids are at school and I thought, oh, I'll go and watch this film. And this guy came over and I reported it. He tried it, and I got up and I said to him I was going to phone the police. And he basically ran over the steps, the chairs, and he ran out of the cinema. So I reported it. And they didn't really do much. They gave me a refund on my ticket. That was sort of the end of it. But this is just me, a few experiences, and there have been many, many more, I would say. Um, and when you start thinking about it, because you almost like forget about it and move on because it's so common. But I would say women need to make sure their mobile phones are charged. If you're walking home, phone a friend, stay on the phone whilst you're walking home. Um, I would say carry a panic alarm. You can get them quite cheap off, off online, like from anywhere. They're very, very loud, so you keep one in your bag, and you literally, it's easy as pulling the string from it. It's like got a tie on it. You pull it, and it makes so much noise, like it's quite deafening. Those sort of things go off. Um, and tell people that you're going from here to there, and so that somebody knows where you are. But we shouldn't have to do that. We shouldn't, because I know, like my kids, like my son, before last year lockdown, like if he's gone with his mates and a group of girls to Broad Street, for example, um, and he said to me, I feel so uncomfortable because all the boys driving past in the cars, these big flash cars, they're winding the window down, they're making comments, they're whistling, they're making lewd comments to the girls that my son's with, things like that. And it's about understanding what makes that person think that it's okay for them to do that and behave in that way. What makes them think that's right. I could tell you so many stories about how, I've heard of stories about young boys, Asian boys, bundling girls into backs of vans, raping them, photographing them. And you know what? The parents don't report it. And the reason they don't report it is because of shame and honor. Because they think
Bestie,
that if I report it to the police, exactly, our is going to get done. That's going to affect our family's honor. Who's going to want to marry my daughter? So what they do is they hide it. And that gives that perpetrator a right to then go to the next victim, and they think the same thing, and the next victim, and so they
because you
get
got
away
away
with
with
this.
it.
until we start standing up to these people, if something happens to our daughter, it's not her shame to bear. It's that perpetrator's shame to bear. She has not done nothing wrong. So we've got to change our mindset as parents. We've got to provide support. And the other thing is, because we're hiding it, you mentioned the training that I did recently. So that training looks at adverse childhood experiences and the impact of something that happens to somebody when they're young. And if they don't get the right support, there is evidence that says the difference, potentially those children will develop in adulthood: early onset diabetes, cancer, heart disease. All of these conditions are not just mental conditions, mental health problems, but also physical health problems. And so these parents, thinking they're protecting their daughters, later on they manifest themselves as trauma. And that trauma is what has an impact on them, and they might affect their future relationships, the relationship they have with their children. You're setting these children on a path which could lead to very, very risky behaviors. Those are the kids then go start taking drugs, possibly alcohol use. They could start getting involved in other risky behaviors, which they may end up in prison. And they've proven this. If we protect our children and support them and get them the right counseling or mental health support after traumatic experiences, then potentially they could end up dying 20 years earlier than somebody who's never had this experience before.
Wow.
That's the difference it makes.
It just shows that it's not just that one incident. Then this is almost like a lifelong traumatic experience that they're having to live through, and it's just that's just horrendous to listen to. And just to sort of pick on a couple of points, I know. When I have some of these conversations, and I've heard the other people to say, look, when you mentioned about you yourself wearing a skirt, I know you've got quite blonde sort of hair. You also mentioned about short hair. So anything that maybe gets women to sort of stand out. Some people, especially maybe from a BAME community or an Asian background as well, they think that these young girls are up for it. They're a bit more, into the sort of, getting a sort of boyfriend girlfriend type of relationship, and it's okay. And even when you sort of maybe wolf whistle or say something, oh, it's only a bit of banter. We're only having a bit of fun. It's harmless. What's your response to that, Sahdaish?
Yeah, it's a really fine line, isn't it? I think young, because a lot of boys now, I've got two sons and they're both in their early 20s. And they say, well, you know what, it makes it really difficult for us because then what they struggle to think, what is that line? If they see someone and think, oh, she's very beautiful, and it's just the admiration of somebody who's very beautiful. What's the line? What's the cutoff point where that other person sees it as lewd or whatever? But I always say to them, it's about consent and it's about comfort. Are you making eye contact to that person? Do they sort of look at you and give you that consent for you to talk to them? And you don't do any more than that. You don't go up and start touching them and things like that. It is a very, very difficult situation that young boys and men are in now, especially because of the Me Too movement as well, And but I do think, historically, wolf whistling, things like that, and some girls have laughed it off, thinking, that it is just messing around or whatever. And if you're okay with that, then that's fine. It's basically understanding that not everybody is comfortable with that. Not everybody is
Sure.
comfortable in a bar or somewhere where somebody comes up to you and starts dancing with you. They're not comfortable with it, and it's that having that consent, I think. With my training, when I started developing my games for children, I went to a school, with a secondary school. There were 14-year-olds, the children were, and they were talking about whether or not boys and girls, if a boy takes a girl out for a meal, she owes him something. And there was this debate going on, and it's one of the cards in the game, so for kids to talk about. And actually, it was really quite surprising how the 40-year-old boys thought that the girls, owed them something because they bought them a meal. So it's that mentality. You have to start challenging that. Why do you think that is? Why should you Why should, if you've bought a girl a meal, you've taken her out to dinner, that she owes you something in return? Where does that mentality come from? And I do think in the Asian community, there is a hierarchy between boys and girls. Boys are often treated favorably compared to girls. And especially in my community, I can say that I know it's an issue. Um, and that is what starts from early childhood or potentially even birth, developing children into something where they feel privileged, entitled, above girls, and they feel that mentality that girls are lower than them and they can do what they want to them. That starts to develop, and that turns into sexual abuse, sexual harassment, domestic abuse later on in life. Those beliefs, so we've got to start young. We've got to start challenging it. And if you see your sons doing this, as in commenting or whatever it is, then you, as mums and dads, we have to challenge that, or caregivers, we've got to challenge it, because otherwise they will grow up believing that it's okay to live like.
I think you're right. I think there's a real responsibility for the family environment, whether it's the parents, the grandparents, the uncles, if they see that their son in particular has any kind of misogynistic views or, very worrying behavior towards female or girls, then that needs to be addressed at that age. And I think because parents are shying away, or some of those discussions can be a bit sensitive or a bit taboo, they tend to sort of leave it to parents or someone else will pick it up, or they will grow out of that phase. And what you find is that if it's not challenged or explained in a mature professional environment, then it can escalate into something a lot more a bit later on. And that's something that I want to sort of talk about in terms of, just, we've got about 10 minutes left really of the show, is that, what can parents do more in, making sure that their sons are obviously taught, but also at the same time, until we have a change in behavior in the men, but also, make sure that the females, some of the tips that you gave was really useful as a bloke, really, to understanding that, letting someone know that you're on your way now, having someone on the call, having that panic button in the, these are things that, as a bloke, I wouldn't even, it wouldn't even occur to me, but that was something that was very insightful. So please, just if you can spend a few minutes just touching on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, we give these sort of hints and tips to, especially with our victims that we work with, the victims of domestic abuse. So when they go out, we always talk to them about safety and security. And obviously, from their perspective, there's a perpetrator out there. So somebody is looking for them. So that's why we have these conversations. But it's not something that we should have to contend with. But unfortunately, we do. And I don't want parents to feel like they need to restrict daughters because of the risk. And what I think from an Asian community as well, I have to say this, that we don't want, if you have a really good positive relationship with your child, with your daughter, if you give her the freedom to talk to you and say, Mum, Dad, I'm going out for a meal, or I'm going to this place, I'm meeting my friends. If you've got that good relationship, then your daughter will be fine with you picking her up, dropping her off, or calling you, or whatever it is. If you are so strict that you control your children, when they start sneaking out and stuff like that, that's when they become unsafe, because then you don't know where they are either. So I would say to our Asian parents, try and be a little bit more open to your children. That way you can keep them safe as well. I would say, like I said again, mobile phones charged, and so many young people use them so much, and it's like, they're on the bus and battery's gone, is dead. So making sure that your phone is charged, especially in the evenings when you're going out. Panic alarms are, like I said, brilliant. I think, like, you can also, there are things that you can do, like you can speed dial 999 if you shake your phone. In some cases, some of them have automatic systems. If you're somebody who's at risk of, like, with domestic abuse, you can get types of panic alarms that are connected as well to the police, and they can track you with that. Yeah, so it's just, I'm just thinking of what else, and I'm not going to sit here and say don't wear these clothes, don't go to pubs or bars and things and drink too much. I mean, I think you do need to be aware, but actually, everybody should have the freedom to be able to do what they want to do. If you want to go out and have fun with your friends, you should be free to do that. You shouldn't be worrying about who's following you and things like that. Because actually, like I said, somebody who's in joggers, jogging out and they've got headphones on and stuff, why should they not wear their headphones? Like, sometimes my husband says, you've always got your headphones in when you go for a walk. And it's like, obviously, because, you listen to music, or I listen to audiobooks quite a lot. But he's saying, like, you don't know if somebody's following you. So, but why should I have to change my habits, and change something that I enjoy because I have to worry about somebody who potentially might be following me? So I think women know what they need to do to protect themselves. And yes, I think, learning martial arts or, Krav Maga or something like that, which is about protecting yourself, is great. But we shouldn't have to protect ourselves if our brothers didn't make us feel uncomfortable. And that's my message really to brothers. And if you see somebody, like, it's difficult because you could go over, I could say to you as a brother, you could say to somebody, a woman's walking on the road, and say to her, look, I can walk you. But you see, that might make her feel even more uncomfortable. So it's how do we get men to protect those women? What I would say is that if you're a bystander and somebody making a lewd comment, call them out on it. Say that you don't appreciate them saying that. If you're in a group of friends and your friends are making comments about women in general, not even at somebody, which happens a lot, call them out. I know there's some of the top universities, and like Oxford, like Bristol, those sorts of Cambridge. If you look at their statistics around sexual harassment, they're huge. So I'm talking about the Asian community, but those universities are full of white Western people, and yet it's still an issue. They've had, I think it was a few years ago, there was, I think it was a cricket team, or a rugby team that was funded by the university. I think it was Bristol, and they had gone to a party, and they'd had those t-shirts that they wear with a number on the back, like a football t-shirt. They had a t-shirt and it had number 10, casual rape. They thought it was funny. And these are meant to be highly intelligent people who are going to be educated at such a level, potentially running our country in the future, or doing very high profile jobs. But that is their mentality, that they thought it was funny to have casual rape written on there. Or another incident where a girl gets a drunk, and instead of helping her up, starting to take photos up her skirt and stuff like that. These are all documented in the public domain. So even for them, they're not supporting. Nobody said protect her, cover her up, or whatever it is. Instead, they started taking photos. So I think it is, men need to call out other men. That's how they
Most
can stand
definitely.
up for women. Yeah, yeah,
I agree
that's
with
what they
you.
need to do.
Last point to this, we're just coming towards the end of the show, is something that I think is playing a large part in terms of how young people, young blokes think they can get away with it, is looking at TikTok, looking at social media. And when they see that, this is the norm, this is what other people get up to, I don't know whether there's a bit of replication or whether there's a bit of mimicking of that sort of behavior.
Mm,
And I know some of the stuff that I've seen on TikTok, I've had to sort of come off it now because it was getting a bit very risque, very lewd, very, like I said, I wasn't comfortable with it. I know, but
mm,
this is a app that is hugely popular with young people.
yeah.
And just want to sort of get your view about how social media and these sort of apps are maybe playing their part in sort of, that aggressive, that sort of sexual behavior towards young
Yeah.
women.
Yeah, I think we have got a real challenge on our hands, because we know that a lot of young people now have, in secondary schools, have phones. If they have mobile phones, they've got easy access to pornography on the internet. And we see this, and I think there a lot of young people are getting almost like their sex education from what they're watching on these
Absolutely.
videos. And it's almost like they're learning that they think this is what girls want, and they think that this is what relationships are about. And I think they are really confused with regards to TikTok. And Like I would talk about Love Island, for example, which loads of young people watch. What it perpetuates and what it stands for, like it doesn't show what a healthy relationship is. And I know that Love Island was even called out for it, for something that they call gaslighting, where a guy was blaming his girlfriend for being too needy, and therefore that's why he went off with the other girl. And I went into a school to do some training with girls, and I've asked this question from adults, and I said, how many of you watch Love Island? And the adults, very few hands. Ask 14, 15-year-old girls, and literally everybody in the room, in the classroom, put their hand up to say they watch it and they love watching it. So these sort of programs are almost like miseducating young people to understand what is healthy and what isn't. And they don't realize that's what's happening, but they're basing their opinions and views on what they're seeing, and music, and, all of these things. And we have got a massive challenge on our hands, but we've got to start challenging it, including these big stars and those sort of people. We need to call them out. But if we've got, as parents, need to be checking. And if your child is under 16 years old, don't think to yourself, I have to give them privacy, I can't check their phone. Do it. You need to protect them, because later on,
Yeah.
they're the ones that are going to be getting into trouble, doing all of this stuff. So
Easier
I
said
would
than
say,
done.
so check it. I know, check it.
Yeah. No, thank you, Sahdaish. We've come to the end of the show. It's been really insightful on a hugely current topic at the moment that is affecting almost 50% of our population. And I'm going to ask you to just sort of bring your thoughts and your sort of your overarching conclusion now to the listeners and viewers about the topic and what we can do as together, really, as a society, in order to move forward from there.
Yeah. Uh, Education. That's what I would say. Education is the key. If one, as parents, we need to make sure that our children are educated in healthy relationships. Gender equality is really key. Consent. Let's teach them about that. Let's ensure that when they're at school, let's give permission for them to attend PSHE, those lessons that you might feel uncomfortable with them attending. Let them attend. I would also say is that if your children are behaving in a certain way which is uncomfortable or inappropriate, call them out. They will thank you for it later. And Mr. Ali, I just want to give a telephone number out for our helpline, because we're part of a consortium which is an honor-based violence and domestic abuse helpline. It's a 24-hour helpline. But you can call us about anything, any issues or concerns around issues like this as well, harassment and so on. If you need advice and guidance, you can call us, and we'll help you as much as we can. So it's a partnership. So there's 3 organisations who are all specialist BAME organisations, and the telephone number is 0800 953 9777, 0800 953 9777. Phone us if you're not sure, you feel uncomfortable, or you want to talk something through and you haven't told the police and you're not sure what to do. Phone us up and we'll talk to you. We'll talk it through with you, and give you the best advice we can.
That's great. Yeah, really happy about you coming in and putting a spotlight on this important issue. Keep up the fantastic work. There is a lot of love towards you about the work that you're doing as well. So just to give you an indication, thank you, Sahdaish, for coming on the program, giving your time from your busy schedule. We salute you. So that's just a small indication of the fantastic work that you are doing, and the best wishes from myself and ZMC. Thank you for your time this evening. So that was the scintillating Sahdaish, who gave us her useful experience over 25 years on the topic about women abuse and about domestic violence, and in particular after the horrendous murder of Sarah Everard, that we thought as ZMC in the re-story that we wanted to visit this and get a understanding of how deep this particular issue is. And we've now found out that 90% of women claim that they have been abused at some point in their lives. That is just a horrific, startling figure. And that is something that we need to address through legislation, through our behavior, through how we bring up young people, especially our sons, and also the role that social media plays as well. So it is a concerted effort that we need to play in order to have a better future and to make sure that 50% of the population feel safe and protected on in a public environment. Please, as always, let's do our bit. And until next week, look after yourselves and each other. God bless.